The person who has influenced my life in terms of action more than anybody is Mahatma Gandhi.
I think I would have to somewhat interpret Gandhi at this point. I don't think he was setting forth violence as an alternative. I think he was emphasizing, or rather trying to refute an all too prevalent fallacy, and that is that the persons who use the method of nonviolence are actually the weak persons, persons who don't have the weapons of violence, persons who are afraid. And I think that is what Gandhi was attempting to refute. Now, in that instance, I would agree with Gandhi that if the only alternative to violence, to fear, is violence and vice versa, then I would...
My speeches at the Roundtable Conference have been all officially reported. Call that as you like. It is complete independence that we want.
Many Indians loved Gandhi. He was seen as a god and as a man of worship to many, but he was just a small man who fought for what he believed in. He fought in a way that many had not done before, in a peaceful, non-violent way. Gandhi, even after his assassination, is still a big influence on many important people in our history. He played a massive role in many civil rights movements. Martin Luther King Jr. is said to have been heavily influenced by Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolence, believing it to be the only logical approach to the problem of race relations in America. Gandhi also influenced Cesar Chavez, another great civil rights leader, to fight for the right of farmers and Mexican laborers. Many others, such as Tibet's Dalai Lama, have followed his methods in years since. Gandhi played and still plays an important role in achieving equality. He was one of the first voices internationally to rise against inequality and injustice. Today, Mahatma Gandhi is no more a person. He has become a phenomenon. In his lifetime, he fought for many causes: colonism, racial discrimination, economic exploitation, and Indians' independence. But predominantly, he fought for human rights, which was the pivot of his existence. His weapons were satya, truth, and ahimsa, non-violence. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was born on October 2, 1869, in Porbandar, India. Later in life, he became known as Mahatma, the Great Soul. Born in a well-known, respected, and distinguished family, Gandhi married Kasturba at the age of 13. Gandhi's experiment with truth reflected even at his early childhood. Gandhi was a member of the Hindu religion, which meant he was not allowed to eat meat or drink wine. His religion and beliefs meant a lot to him. He never broke any promises. Even at a young age, Gandhi showed he was responsible, honest, and loyal to himself and his religion. After graduating high school, Gandhi wanted to study in a different place. So in 1818, Mohandas Gandhi left his country to study law in London. After a 4-year career, Gandhi finally decided to return to India in 1891. When he arrived home, he learned his mother had passed away shortly after he had left. After a failed attempt at law, Gandhi was offered a job in South Africa to work for an Indian business. In 1893, he arrived in Durban, where he remained there for a week and then left for Pretoria by train. Gandhi had purchased a first-class ticket. Halfway through the trip, a white passenger complained about having to share a compartment with the coolie, and then Gandhi was asked to move to a third-class carriage. Gandhi later on described this event as a large influence on his political future. When Gandhi was in South Africa, the growing anti-Indian attitude had spread to NATO. 2 bills were passed in those following 2 years. They restricted Indian freedom severely. The Immigration Law Amendment Bill stated that any Indian had to return to India at the end of a 5-year period. In 1894, a Franchise Amendment Bill had a great impact on many Indians. It was designed to limit the franchise to Indians who had the right to vote. Gandhi played a massive role in campaigns for Indian equality. He was assigned the task of petitions, arranging meetings, addressing letters, and catching the attention of newspapers. He established the NATO-Indian Congress on May 22, 1894. Although at the beginning the NIC was only for wealthy people, but Gandhi worked with all classes and castes. By 1896, Gandhi had established himself as a great political leader and took a journey to launch a protest campaign on behalf of Indians in South Africa. He had a successful campaign in the Barons of government. That year, he also returned to India in order to bring his family along with him. In South Africa was where he first coined the term Satyagraha to signify his theory and practice on non-violent resistance. Gandhi urged Indians to defy the new law and to suffer the punishments for doing so. The community adopted his plan, and during the ensuing 7-year struggle, thousands of Indians were jailed, flogged, or shot for striking, refusing to register, for burning their register cards, or engaging in other forms of nonviolent resistance. The government did everything they could to repress the peaceful protesters, but the publicity they were receiving for hurting peaceful protesters was not good. It forced the South African leader John Christian Smut to negotiate a compromise with Gandhi. In 1915, Gandhi finally returned permanently to India. He joined the Indian National Congress and became aware of the issues that many Indians were going through. Gandhi encouraged Indians to boycott British goods and to only buy Indian goods. It helped revive small Indian stores, and it also hit British undermining their role in the economy. Gandhi preached about passive resistance. He believed that by provoking the British government with violence, it would hurt their chances of independence. And instead, by using peace, it would push the government to hurt any peaceful protesters, and it will catch the attention of the world and cause many people to support the Indian National Congress. Gandhi was imprisoned in 1922, 1930, 1933, and in 1942. And whenever Gandhi was in prison, he would go on hunger strikes. His hunger strikes were very famous, and it was the talk about India whenever he went on one. If the British government allowed Gandhi to die in jail, it would greatly embarrass them. On March 12, 1930, Gandhi began a march. It was called the Salt March, in order to protest British monopoly on salt. His boldest act of civil disobedience against the British Empire. Britain's Salt Acts prohibited Indians from collecting or selling salt, a staple in the Indian diet. On March 12, Gandhi set out from Sabarmati with 78 followers and 241-mile march to the coastal town of Dandi on the Arabian Sea. There, Gandhi and his supporters were to defy British policy by making salt from seawater. Civil disobedience broke out all across India, soon involving millions of Indians, and British authorities arrested more than 60,000 people. Gandhi himself was arrested on March 5th, but the Satyagraha continued without him. And in January 1931, Gandhi was released from prison. He later met with Lord Irwin, the Viceroy of India, and agreed to call off the Satyagraha in exchange for an equal negotiation role at the London Confederate on India's future. When World War II broke out, both the Congress Party and Gandhi decided not to support Britain unless the British granted them complete independence, the Quit Indian movement. He was again in prison, and this was his final imprisonment in 1942, but was released 2 years later in 1944 because of failing health. In August, Gandhi traveled to the Confederates as the sole representative of the Nationalist Indian National Congress. The meeting was a disappointment, but British leaders had acknowledged him as a force they could not suppress or ignore. India's independence was finally granted in August 1947. A Hindu extremist assassinated Gandhi on January 30, 1948. His death left all of India stunned and confused on the direction newly independent India should take without Gandhi. Many years have passed, but yet Gandhi still plays an important role in our society. He influenced many other civil rights leaders. He helped fight for equality, change, and the rights for all citizens.